Town of Evansville. Roll call, please.
Mayor Chad Edwards.
Here.
Councilmember Joseph Knoll.
Here.
Councilmember Aaron Vino.
Here.
Councilmember Sheena Hicks. Councilmember Candace Machado. Town Attorney Scott Murray.
Here.
Chief of Police Mike Thompson.
Here.
Assistant Fire Chief Mark Cornett.
Here.
Public Works Director Paul Hansen.
Here.
Town Clerk Janelle Underwood and arrested citizens.
Allegiance to the flag for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Motion to approve the agenda. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Number 1, consent agenda. Approval of the regular meeting minutes for October 12th, 2020. The approval of business license for painting. Have any discussion first of all? Or motion to approve?
So moved. Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 2, the Lathrop Road traffic study. So this is more to know what's going on. So about a year or so ago, the Town of Evansville and the Casper MPO put together a project to basically look at the traffic and safety patterns out here at Lathrop and Curtis, Luker Lane, Lathrop Road, all the way out to Blackmore, the connection of Blackmore and Lathrop, and then Blackmore over to 2026. So that project has been awarded to Y2K, I believe is the name. They just merged with a company called Western. And they are starting the traffic study. So they began Friday coming out and doing a traffic safety assessment. So they looked at all the intersections in the roads, and that project is ongoing. So right now they're in the data collection phase. So they'll be out collecting reference materials, traffic counts, historical collision data for all those intersections. And they've also set up a Facebook page that everyone can find them at, which was the Lathrop Road Traffic Study on Facebook. They have a website, and they also have email and a phone number. So they are asking for community input, safety, walkability, drainage, basically everything to do with the area. So if anybody has any input, they've got a lot of mediums out there in order to provide your input, as well as they plan on having a charrette here in town December 3rd. People can get together and kind of see their progression and also present additional ideas. So inside the clerk's office, we've got these little handouts that have ways in order to communicate with them. So anybody that would like to input, I'm sure would like to hear it. So just want to get that out to everybody. All right. Item number 3 is the discussion of the handicap access to the bank of mailboxes. So down on 7th Street and over on Platte Valley. So this has been something that was brought up before by the citizens, and something that I've been communicating with Public Works and stuff, coming up with some options. Paul was able to come up with an alternative to actually ripping up outside the concrete to lay an access pad. Just to lay the groundwork to everybody. I've gone and looked at both the sites. So we do have the ramp access on each of the corners, each of the mailbox sections. So there are the pads already there, but the problem is somebody coming from across the street, it's not crossing at the corner. There is a substantial curb to get up and go over. Some of the concerns that we have, of course, are making sure that we have water flow through the gutters. We can't put something in there that would block that and whatnot. So Paul had come up with a couple of options that are out there for low riding cars and things that people can put ramps up to come up in the driveway. As a kid, I can remember we all had big steel plates over top of the gutters in order to get in and out. So it's similar to that, a little more up to date. But there was an option that Paul had brought out that could be a less expensive option for us to put in there to provide a little bit of help going up on top of the curve. There are a few things that I think council should consider, one of which being maintaining it. So putting that in there, we of course don't have the resources to go clear it of ice and snow and things like that, so that would be a consideration. The one on 7th Street, I think parking in front of it is another consideration. The one on 7th Street, I think we've got a good no parking zone going all the way up to the edge of the mailboxes. So there's an area where that could be placed. The other one, you might have to look at that and prevent someone from parking in front of it and defeating the purpose of it. So those are, I believe, right around $220 to $250 a piece.
Yeah, for the actual curb ramp insert with the labor, just to keep them from walking away and shifting, we would also drill an anchor hole in the concrete and make sure it's fastened down. Kind of a popular item for RV owners to, hey, walk home with. So it would secure it in place, as well as, you know, allowing a smooth a transition with a device like this that we can find. It's cost effective for a good experiment.
So that is something that Paul had come up with that could be less expensive, something that we could get in a quicker fashion, but there's enough pieces to this that I wanted to get council's input and thoughts.
So is that what that is made for? Is that like the typical, just to take the curb out for your car when you drive in your driveway kind of thing?
It is. It's a curb insert. There are hundreds of different variations available, most of which don't allow the flow of water underneath. This particular one, among several others, does. The nature of this one has some flexibility over some of the other more rigid plastics, which, you know, I've got some concern with as far as, you know, sub-zero temps and somebody driving on it as far as cracking, as well as just some experience in my past seeing that happen.
I guess my real question is, do we know that it's of the proper grade for somebody to use with a wheelchair?
Well, the roll curb in front of the two locations at the mailboxes, it is only approximately about a 4-inch rise, and it's nearly 2 feet in length. So it's really close to the 1 in 12 slope. The thickness is 3/8 of an inch, so it's a really minor bump. You know, nothing that ADA says a no to. It is a little bit of a bump rather than if we were to do a curb cut and install, you know, totally compliant ADA ramps. But yeah, it shouldn't impede. It should actually really help the flow of a wheelchair.
Good deal.
This was something that we looked at as a possibility of something we could put in sooner rather than later. We are looking at putting that out. That's got to be a budgeted item. We'll have to start the budget cycle.
Yeah, I did a little bit of research as far as installing a full ADA compliant ramp with, you know, cutting and chipping out concrete and forming those. There's 2 different ways we can go, is be due to the sidewalk and the access around it. Those on average are about $2,000 per ramp for a permanent compliant, you know, fix for that.
Be a good short-term fix.
That was the idea, is just as potentially something we get in the short term to help the situation out.
For the cost, worth a try, I believe.
Yeah. And then would we just paint in front of the mailboxes to make sure nobody's parking there?
We would have to come up with some type of marking, curb marking in the winter times. Obviously, no matter what kind of marking is going to get covered up with snowfall. But just a yellow stripe paint on the curb, either direction from the ramp. And the ramp, by the way, is 4 feet wide, so it's wider than an actual 36-inch.
On the Platte Valley side, there's already a turnaround in there. So my suggestion was that we put it in the middle of that to prevent somebody from running over. On the 7th Street, I think we'd be very hesitant putting it right directly in front of the mailboxes, because in my observations down there researching this, almost every person visiting the mailboxes drove up on into the mailboxes. So I would want to be very hesitant about putting it directly in front and then somebody drive on it, break it,
Right.
and doesn't serve that purpose. So I think down there, my suggestion would be is if council wants to put this in to offset it to the east where we've already painted the no parking position. So it would require someone to come up and then kind of go over to the mailboxes, but I think it's our best bet of keeping it intact.
I would recommend off to the side at both locations. The other location, if you look at the landing on the top from the mailboxes, the concrete pad is extended out a little ways just to allow somebody a good turning area to get in front of the boxes there.
So what does everybody think?
I think it's a good idea.
The surface of the ramp, you said, was it plastic, metal?
It's basically a rubber sheet, about 3/8 of an inch thick.
Okay, so it's got good traction even if it gets snowy.
Yeah, any surface, even a rough concrete's gonna ice up, but no, the rubber should be a good fit. Good try.
And that was a large concern I had with the idea, was that it's not something that we have the ability to maintain.
Right.
So it's something we can put in to assist with that transition, but it's going to be on the user's responsibility whether they use that or not.
Is it something that we could regularly toss some salt on or some ice melt? Or is that not something that you?
Well, yeah, that's on, both streets are on routine snow removal runs. So it wouldn't really be anything, out of the norm just to turn the spreader on at those locations.
Would the salt break down the rubber real quick?
No more than any other area in town. The ice lacer we use is theoretically as safe as you can put on any street or sidewalk.
How is Casper or Mills or Barna or any of these other places, how are they handling situations like this with ADA compliance with these mailboxes? Because it's the same thing out in Barna and Mills and some of those areas where you don't have any ramps or anything that go up to these mailboxes. So I just wonder, how are they handling?
Pretty well varied, but the ones I'm familiar with out in Bar None, they're at street level. They're in the areas, the ones that I've known are in areas that are not curbed. So they're at street level and you don't have that elevation change.
I don't believe there's any requirement to put these in. The ADA requirements that we put them on the corners, which we do have. This was something, an additional piece that a citizen brought forward that we were trying to offer, help out the situation so somebody didn't have to go all the way down to the corner.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea for a temporary fix. I think we have to do something more substantial for the.
Yeah, I felt it was something to get us by until we can budget for a more permanent fix. And frankly, I believe that the 7th Street area is probably a bigger problem because when you look at the other area, there's a really large pull around, so you can have multiple vehicles in there. But on the 7th Street area, if one person pulled in there, that's about all you're going to get. So that would really leave someone else to potentially have to utilize that curve. So the council wants to move forward with? Or a motion to move forward with purchasing and installing these ramps?
To move.
Or a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, I have one other item before we get to public comments. I just kind of wanted to give a report to council and the town on where we're at. As you all know, the police department has been woefully understaffed for a while, and Chief's been working on trying to has left a bit of a excess in his personnel budget. And I know over the past year or so, the chief and I have talked to some potential candidates who had some law enforcement experience that were looking and interested in coming to the town. But for one reason or another, we've just been unable to seal the deal. So Chief and I had discussed some possible incentives to be able to entice people in. So we ended up with part of that excess personnel budget to be able to offer bonus incentive for experienced law enforcement officers to come to the town. So I believe the chief has put that out and the feelers out so that we can start that process. But I felt need to let council and everyone know that we've begun that process. So, Chief, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Unless you guys have questions. Not at this time.
All right. With that, we'll go to public comments. Have any public comments? One more time, public comments? All right. Those public comments. Do I have a motion to move into executive session?
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, y'all are welcome to stay if you like. Sure. 7:17.
Oh, it says directions.